everyone, and welcome to Once Upon a Time at the Oscars.
The show that takes you through every Best Picture nominee from 1927 to today.
I'm Kyle.
And I'm Ryan.
And today, we're talking Poverty Row Pictures.
That's right. We are talking about when you have the opportunity to be someone who you're not for even just a week. Perhaps even a day.
Exactly. I don't know about you, but I do that all the time.
I think I do it a little bit, and it's only for me. Like, I don't think anyone else is like, oh, what a rich life he lives. I'm more like, wow, what a rich life he lives, and I'm talking about me.
I do it for a paycheck.
Oh, you actually act. That's true. Good point. Yeah, we're talking about Lady for a Day. Now, this is important because it is the first time that a huge name pops up for us, and that's Frank Capra.
Yep.
Frank Capra is going to be a very large part of what we talk about moving forward, especially for the next couple years.
Yeah.
But, I mean, this month, next month, we're going to be talking about Frank Capra in two very large pictures.
Yeah, and not only two large pictures. 1935, Frank Capra will eventually become the Academy president, and he had monumental effects on the Academy. We'll talk about this more when it comes up, but the Academy's not doing so great historically at this point.
Right.
People are leaving. There's a lot of issues with the studio and with union things and all of that, and we'll get into more details later. But Frank Capra kind of becomes the man who saved the Academy. So it's cool to see him show up now with his first attempt, we'll call it, at a Academy Award win.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's interesting because I think that Capra and his films... Well, I should separate those two at first. I think Capra's films try to portray exactly what Capra's narrative is at this time, or at that time in 1935.
Yeah.
Of like the man who can save the Academy and the Academy itself.
Yeah.
That's kind of his story of like how one person or at least a group of people can come together and create something meaningful.
Yeah. Frank Capra is a really interesting individual and one that I've at least started to research like pretty heavily.
Yeah.
I picked up his autobiography last year at some point. The name beneath the title, or the name underneath the title, and it's an autobiography. He wrote it himself, and it's kind of written in a way like it feels like a movie. So some things are very dramatic and showboaty, but he's kind of known for being the example of the American dream. Came over as an immigrant and started from nothing, and kind of almost weaseled and lied his way into his fame and success.
Interesting.
But ultimately, Lady for a Day serves, again, as his first attempt at winning an Oscar, because that was a big deal for him.
Certainly. I mean, it wasn't his first film. No. One of his film before this, actually, The Bitter Tea of General Yen, came in 1932. It was something that had not opened, or actually, I'm sorry, it did open Radio City Music Hall. It was the first film they played at Radio City Music Hall, to a point where they actually kind of saw him as good luck.
Yeah.
So they immediately signed on to, or booked, the premiere of Lady for a Day because they considered Capra good luck. Yeah. So he has this kind of lore built around him of a filmmaker and, you know, the luck that he brings and the stories that he tells. So it's interesting to see his kind of presence here. He does change the Academy for a pretty significant amount. You're right. Yeah. And he has a very large backstory. Obviously, we're going to be talking about him this month, right now, for Lady for a Day. Next month, for the year of 1934, we'll be talking about It Happened One Night. Obviously, one of Capra's most well-known pictures, It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah.
There's a very big contingency around Frank Capra and the films that he makes. I mentioned on the previous episode for Private Life of Henry VIII that I have the Blu-ray collection. I know this is available online. It features, it is 15 to 20 films of his. It doesn't actually feature It's a Wonderful Life. It features majority of the others. It Happened One Night, Lady for a Day, Mr. Deeds Goes to Washington. There are a lot of movies that are featured in there, and those three alone are going to be something we talk about with the Academy Awards. Mr. Deeds is...
Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. Mr. Deeds comes to town.
Yeah. I combine those two. But yeah, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington for sure.
Yeah. Great movie.
Great movie. And Mr. Deeds as well. I'm abbreviating, not the Adam Sandler version. But
right. Very sneaky.
Very sneaky, sir. So Lady for a Day. The nominations around this are as follows. Best Adapted Screenplay for Robert Riskin. Best Actress for May Robson. Best Director, Frank Capra. This is his first of 6 nominations as director.
Crazy.
An Outstanding Production on behalf of Columbia Pictures.
Yeah.
I do want to talk about Columbia Pictures in this, but I think we should talk about the cast first.
Yeah.
And I am so excited for you to say these cast names.
So we've got Warren William as Dave the Dude.
Uh-huh. Hell yeah, we do.
May Robson plays Apple Annie. Mm-hmm. These are all like the worst superheroes. Guy Kibbe as Henry D. Blake, and Glenda Farrell as Missouri Martin.
So, a couple things about this. Going down the cast of this before the movie started, and I intentionally didn't read a synopsis, because based on everything I'd read with 42nd Street, I was like, well, I'm going to read what happens in the last 15 minutes, so I might as well walk in blind.
Right.
But seeing the names, I was like, Dave the Dude, Apple Annie, Judge Blake. I was like, is this a Little Rascals cartoon? Like, what is happening with this movie?
It's like the cast of Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Yes, 100%. And the truth behind it is that the characters that we follow are all kind of in the underground of New York.
Yeah.
Right? So they all have a lot of cool nicknames. Dave the Dude, Apple Annie. I bet you can guess what she does. And
Makes pretzels.
Right? Wait until she becomes an ant, and then it's going to really come into play.
Dumb joke.
No, I got it immediately. I was like, oh, Annie
Just
Ant.
because you get the joke doesn't mean it's a good joke, but thanks.
That's true. I guess what you don't want to hear after a joke is, I understand.
Right.
Judge Blake, I was like, oh, they're going to get in trouble with the law. Nope. Well, I mean, kind of, but a judge isn't involved.
Yeah.
Just the judge. And there's a couple other individuals. I'm trying to find the nice way of like describing the cast of characters that hang out with Apple Annie. I don't think beggars is good, but I think that was the term used back then.
Yeah. Yeah, because the whole thing is Apple Annie is borderline homeless, really.
She does have a home that she goes back to, but it is a severe, distinct style difference from her home versus, I mean, we end up seeing Dave the Dude's home.
Right.
We see one of the hotel rooms available at a nearby hotel. Very different.
Yeah. This is another look at like the Depression itself.
Yes.
A movie that talks about the Depression.
How it affects people.
Exactly. So even when the movie first opens up and you're introduced to all of the like on the street citizens, I mean, you have an individual who kind of rides around on like not a skateboard, but like a board with wheels because he has no legs.
I'm trying to remember his name. It's like Smiley or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. But everybody kind of has those like 1930s gangsters names.
There's a blind man. There's a couple individuals who, they really are a cast of characters, and they're kind of Annie's friends, Apple Annie's friends. And we're introduced to Annie as someone who sells apples just on the side of the street. And she's actually the good luck charm for a gangster named Dave the Dude.
Right.
Can we talk about the dude real quick?
Sure can.
What do you think, and what's your understanding of the like meaning of the dude in 1933?
I really don't know. I hadn't thought about it until just now.
Is it just like Dave the guy? Like he's just the dude?
I think so.
Okay.
Like
I wasn't
he's
sure if
the
there's
dude.
I wasn't sure if this was like invalid type thing from Shanghai Express where it's like there's a meaning back then that doesn't really follow now. But yeah, they all say Dave the Dude. And I was like, that's a sick name.
Did you have the same experience in elementary school where you would say dude all the time and there was that one person who was like, hey, do you know the scientific definition for dude? Did you have that experience?
I'm worried that might be me.
Do you know the scientific definition?
No, I'm just worried that was me. That was like, actually.
Yeah, like I said dude a lot in elementary school.
Still do.
And wow, you're right, I do. But yeah, some kid came up and was like, did you know a dude is the hair on an elephant's butt?
Gotta tell you, if that is true, if that kid is right, I'm not sure why we're naming a gangster Dave the Elephant Butt Hair.
Well, he probably didn't know either.
He's
just like
making it up.
me.
Oh, Dave didn't.
Yeah. And then eventually some gangster came up and was like, did you know? And then, he beat him or something.
Yeah, he sleeps with the fishes now.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, so Dave the Dude, Apple Annie, Judge Blake, there's a lot of other names of like the cast of characters surrounding Apple Annie. I do want to point out that not only was this based on a short story by Damon Bunyan.
Runyon.
Runyon?
Runyon.
I need to... My God, my writing is terrible. My apologies to the Runyon family. Damon Runyon in 1929. My R's, when it bleeds, looks like a B. I'm so sorry. Madame Le Gimp was the name of that short story.
Yeah.
It was then adapted into Lady for a Day. There was some hesitation to doing this because they were unsure of how they could kind of make it sympathetic of a story like that. The answer is very easily. But this was something that the incomparable Frank Capra was up for.
Yeah.
So,
and he actually is the one that read the story and bought the rights to it.
correct. And he brought it to the screen. So a number of the characters surrounding Apple Annie, Smiley, I think was one of them. We'll have to double check on that. But the beggars, the word they use there, actually were unhoused individuals at the time.
Ah, that makes
so
sense.
he did bring in people from the street and hired for the film. And I think that brings a lot of authenticity to it because it doesn't just feel like, hey, we did this, isn't that a cool thing? They're really memorable. They're very fun. Like I love them not breaking into, but essentially just like ransacking Dave the Dude's apartment. Just like, we can't find Apple Annie. It's a great scene because, and we do need to talk about Shakespeare at some point. Shakespeare is one of Dave the Dude's accomplices.
Yeah.
Who's with him all the time. He's essentially he's the fool.
Yeah.
Shakespeare. The boss, that guy.
Okay, yeah.
So he comes in, he's like, I've been looking for Apple Annie everywhere. You can shoot my mom.
Oh my God.
If I'm not telling the truth, I've talked to everyone. No one knows where she is. And as soon as he says this, 10 of her friends come in and they're like, we know where Apple Annie is. And you can see Shakespeare being like, "Eh," like walking off screen.
Yeah.
So good. Incredible timing and comedy with them. And I say that to say that, like, again, it's not just the novelty of like, well, it seemed right to kind of have, A, give back to the community like that, but B, like them portray similar characters in that way. They're very memorable. They're given good lines. Like, they have good chemistry. I really like the casting in this movie. The other casting side of this is Ned Sparks plays Happy Maguire. Happy Maguire is in contention for me with George E. Stone on the recently created inaugural award, Once Upon a Time Supporting Character of the Year. Because there are shots of Happy Maguire in this that destroyed me. I have laughed so hard at him. A couple of them is there's a butler later on introduced, and he says some things of like, if I had to choose a weapon to fight you with, I'd choose a dictionary or the vocabulary. And there's a shot, I'm not doing it justice to you, and I'm so sorry to our audio listeners, but there's a shot where it cuts to Happy's face when he says that, and he's like, I would choose a dictionary, and Happy goes... And he just like turns his head and like looks back and looks shocked. And he has such a perfect shocked face. And it's amazing because with a gangster, especially someone who's like the right-hand man to someone like notable like Dave the Dude, you would think he's like, I'm going to kill you.
Right.
But instead, he's just like, why would you say that?
Genuinely offended.
Yeah, he's like genuinely offended. And he's so good at that. So the supporting characters all the way around in this, I thought was just, it felt very lived in. It felt real. It felt like a slice of life, and that's obviously what Frank Capra is known to do. So I was a very big fan of that. Before we get into the synopsis, because the synopsis is kind of just like, beginning to end pretty quick. How did you feel about this? Because obviously Frank Capra is a very large name, and he builds to the movie he's most known for, arguably, is going to be It's a Wonderful Life.
Right.
But this is the beginning of it. So how did you feel about... Let's start at It's a Wonderful Life and the legacy of him, and then let's end with this movie.
Oh, boy. It's a Wonderful Life is an interesting movie for me.
Sure.
I didn't see it until I was almost 30.
Okay, so recently.
Fairly recently.
Yeah.
And the first time I watched it, this is all plot-wise, I think the movie itself and Frank Capra and what he did is tremendous. The movie itself I was kind of lukewarm on.
Sure.
Whatever, my opinion on that has changed a little bit. But I knew what Frank Capra was capable of. So I was very excited going into this.
Is this your second Capra film then?
No, I've seen it happen one night as well.
Okay, got it.
Which, big fan of that one.
Copy.
That being said, I was super excited for this, and I think as I was watching it, we're introduced to Apple Annie, and we kind of get the idea of what her story is, and Mae Robson is great as Apple Annie. So there was a lot being set up, not to mention I was reading the autobiography. So there was so much just pulling me towards
So many
Capra.
reasons for you to love it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Once I sat down and started going through the movie, I don't know that this held up for me the way I hoped it would. How did you feel?
I'm Capra pilled. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
Like this is my second movie of his that I've watched, and It's a Wonderful Life was actually a similar thing for me. I was in my 30s when I watched, like I'm not in my 30s right now, but it took me until being in my 30s to watch it. And I think I'd heard so much about it, and it was very like, I don't want to say overhyped, but talked about, and you expected something. And the thing I'd always heard is that it's like the classic Christmas/New Year's watch. Like in December, you watch this movie. And I ended up doing that one time because Taylor had seen it, and she's like, it's sad, and I don't want to watch it. And I was like, okay.
It's very depressing.
Noted. And then I watched it. Yeah, oh my God, like it's depressing.
Yeah.
Like I've never seen a movie at that point that was like so celebrated and loved that was just absolutely like a heartbreaker.
Yeah.
And not even like at the end, but like in the 15-20 minute mark, there's a child who gets beaten up by a pharmacist because the pharmacist almost kills someone else for his son dying.
Yeah.
There's
a lot in that movie.
3 forms of violence in that sentence alone. Like, it's crazy to think about. So I ended up like watching that movie, and my first watch was like, yeah, that was very sad, but oh my God, I loved that. And then ever since then, that was like 3 years ago, I've watched it every year around Christmas time, and it's just like a classic. I saw it. This is amazing. My parents and I, about 2 years ago, The Strand was playing it. And I think The Strand plays it every year. But we were able to go to Third Door, which is a bar, and they were having a Christmas Vacation themed drink menu, and like they decorated the bar to look like Christmas Vacation. And we were able to go to that and then walk over to The Strand and see It's a Wonderful Life. And to me, that was like, if there's a Hallmark movie made about my life, it's that night.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, we're going to the square and walking to the local theater to see It's a Wonderful Life. And I loved it. And ever since then, I've just been so obsessed with like what Capra does in that movie. So I was excited to see what the similarities were in this. And I was a big fan of this because I saw the vision of what his story is, like his kind of formula. Mm-hmm. A lot of people talk about Adam Sandler right now being the Frank Capra of his time. And I think that's a really interesting conversation because he is not a person that's like, oh yeah, he's Frank Capra. But if you look at what he's doing, he is actually kind of creating like there's a formula, there's a narrative, there's a cast of characters, and at the end of the day, like everyone walks home happy. Like there is that element of like he is the, for better or worse, the 21st century version of Frank Capra. And it's interesting because then I go and look, and I'm so familiar with Adam Sandler's movies. Then I go to something like this. And obviously you can't argue Mr. Deeds is literally a Frank Capra film. It's Mr. Deeds Comes to Town, right?
Yeah.
So it's a remake of that. But then you talk about Happy Gilmore, Happy Maguire in this. Like there's just nice little coincidences that probably don't have anything to do with it. But still, it's an interesting comparison. We're not talking about Adam Sandler. What I say all that to say that I have the idea of the narrative, very familiar with that narrative in Adam Sandler. So I was interested to see what happens with this. And what happens with this is what I expected and hoped for, which is we take a situation that is dark and grim, and we're not going to shy away from like the severity of it, something that I don't think Adam Sandler does very well, but we're not shy away from it, but at the same time build up this community and build up this individual with people around them and kind of take like the heartwarming story and have a really good payoff for it. And I really liked this a lot, like to a point where I was just like enamored with this. And I want to say that this is a complete personal choice. This is the best movie of the year. This is just might be one of my favorites. 42nd Street, I think, still takes the cake of like, look what we could do.
Yeah.
Like this is incredible. Better movie. But this hit me a little bit better because this is exactly what I'm looking for in a movie like this. It's not the filmmaking aspect. It's not the shots. It's not like look what they can do with the camera. It's the storytelling. And I really like Capra's storytelling. So for me, a hit. Because I like Capra's storytelling so much. So I'm really excited, not just to watch all the films in that collection that I have, but also next month, more importantly, cover It Happened One Night, probably his second most prominent film he's talked about, or that's talked about in his iconography.
Yeah.
Filmography? Yeah. Either way.
Right. No, I agree. Boy, you make a Christmas movie, and as long as it's good, you're set.
See, and that's the thing. That's what he's known for the most, totally. But obviously the casting of It Happened One Night, you talk about Jimmy Stewart in It's a Wonderful Life. Mm. To me, I mean, you can't even come close to calling like Warren William and his performance like close to that. But you see the text. You see the whole like this really gruff individual and how he kind of opens up and ends up spending like his entire but his entire wealth to help this one person who just he believes gives him luck. Like it's a perfect like cynical movie that helps you be a little more optimistic by the end. So I liked it a lot. I do want to preface this is not me saying it's the best movie of the year. It's just one of my favorites because the storytelling aspect is so up my alley. So with that said, the beginning end of this story is that Apple Annie has been down and out because of the depression, but has lied about this to her daughter,
right,
who lives overseas. And she has been painting a narrative through letters that she sends of how she is in high society and in high wealth, and the social season is over, so she finally gets to breathe and send another letter to her daughter. And in reality, she has struck up a deal with the local mailman who works at a hotel. Is it the Murbury?
I don't remember.
We'll say the Murberry.
Yeah.
It was a wealthy hotel in New York.
Yeah.
And she has struck up a deal with him where she will give him letters and he'll send it out. And then when he receives the letters from her daughter, he will give them to Apple Annie.
The way mail works.
The way mail works, Certainly. He was the mailman for her. And ultimately, it turns out that she finds out through a number of events that her daughter is actually on her way and will be there soon because her fiance is of high class as well. And his father, the Duke, I believe,
I think so.
wants to, we can tell who loved and who didn't. His father, the Duke, wants to meet her family in order for them to really establish this marriage.
Yeah.
So she's now panicking and doesn't know what to do. And she runs into her good luck charm, she is the good luck charm to Dave the Dude. He's like, hey, I just need an apple. I don't need to hear all this story.
Right.
But he sees her daughter. And at first I thought this was a storyline of like, oh, wow, her daughter's really cute. Maybe I can set this up.
Yeah.
But that's not it. It's just he starts feeling more emotion for her and more sympathy.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
He leaves her like a little bit and then says, hey, I'll make sure the doctor comes and checks on you. But he kind of leaves it alone. It's not until her cast of character friends convince him, hey, what if we got her like a hotel, like say at the Murberry for a week? It's not a big deal. And we haven't even talked about Missouri Martin.
Right.
She's a dancer and a singer at the club that he frequents. So he knows her really well. She offers to make her up and, be under his employment to like dress her up and everything. And ultimately makes her a lady for not just a day, but a week and transform her.
Yeah. She's a lady for a while.
She's a lady for a while. I do want to point out one of the only issues that I have with the movie, and I'm sure you've noted this too. There's the makeover scene where they're like, we have to make over her? What a rich tapestry for us to work with. And they take her into a room. She looks beautiful when she comes out. My issue is that it's been hours that they've had her in there and like make her up and everything. And when she walks out, she goes from like, I don't know how to act like I'm in high society at all. And she comes out, she's like, good evening, sir. I'm like, okay.
Right.
Like, look, just because we changed the clothing, gave her like makeup and everything does not mean that she is now, I've had all the classes of how to exist in high society.
Here's the thing, Ryan. This is the one thing that didn't bother me about this movie. I love the very subtle hints that May Robson's character, Apple Annie, has a history of being wealthy.
Oh.
You don't know what her backstory is at all. They never dive into that history. But it is subtly hinted that she does come from a life of wealth. But because of the Depression, she has ended up completely down on her luck.
Right.
And she is struggling. So I think that what it is, when she is acting sporadic and, her accent and her words are slurred, like she is an alcoholic at the beginning of this movie.
Right.
She's struggling to make ends meet and keep a roof over her head. So when she goes in, she's kind of frantic and panicked about the situation of her daughter showing up. What is she going to do? Is she going to be able to pull this off, or is she going to be found out that she's not this wealthy woman?
Right.
So when she goes in with Missouri Martin to get this makeover, I think the idea is that Missouri Martin thinks she's going to have to put her through kind of like
rigorous training or something.
Yeah, teach her how to be a lady. But she knows that. She comes from that life. And once she looks in the mirror and she sees who she is again, she goes back to that mentality. She's like, oh, this is who I was. I know what I'm doing here, and I'm going to do this now for my daughter. I like all of that subtle nod to like a hidden history there.
Right.
The problem is I enjoy May Robson's character so much.
Yeah.
And I like the setup for all of this, her meeting with her daughter and like how she's going to make it work. That falls off so quickly.
She's sidelined.
We do not follow her story at all from this point.
It's an interesting name for the movie, Lady for a Day.
Yeah.
Not just because it is a week or so that she is, in this role, but it really doesn't follow her for much of the movie.
No, it's Lady for like 20 minutes, and the rest is all about these gangsters.
The dude.
Kind of setting up what's going to happen with her. They kind of invent this ball that's going to happen. Like, they go over the top for her. And they say, oh, she'll be present at this ball, and that's when your daughter can come with her fiancé. And, well, now we've got to make that work. We've got to find Annie a husband. And that's when the judge comes into the picture and all of that. And the problem is, I don't care about any of the gangsters. Not a single one of them.
You want the emotional resonance of...
I do.
Yeah, of Apple Annie.
She's so good in this movie. When she's like freaking out about her daughter showing up, her performance is so incredible, and it feels so ahead of something from the 1930s. I was hooked.
You're talking about like when she went to the Marbury Hotel or whatever it is and was like, you can't send that letter. Like, give me the letter. Where's my letter? Like, I need it. And then she like slams the letters to the ground while he's putting it in the mailbox.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that was incredible.
I mean, anytime she gets emotional too and she starts crying, like it feels real in a way that the 30s doesn't always feel real.
Sure.
So I was so into her character. But then we sideline her for Dave the Dude and all of the gangsters. And I understand that like they have funny lines and stuff, but this shift from what we're supposed to be focusing on really killed it for me.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. And again, like there's a clear distinction for me of like the best movie and my favorite. Like I did love this, but you're right. Like she is sidelined and it does favor Warren William as the dude. The interesting thing here is I think that was Capra's intention because he felt like it was going to be difficult to kind of make a movie that was sympathetic. That might be the wrong term, but like he had hesitations of adapting the story Madame Le Gimp as is. So he wanted to make changes. Clearly the change that he favored was Warren William as Dave the Dude and it kind of focusing on him. And I think this works because it shows his kind of like tough exterior at the beginning and then almost to a flaw. He very quickly turns of like, well, yeah, let me go ahead and payroll front the bill on all of this. Oh, the butler needs to be paid? Well, here's his expenses, but also here's to retain him because we need more of him. Oh, we have to pay everyone to kind of act this way? Let me go ahead and bankroll that.
Yeah.
So to a flaw, he almost quickly is just like, there's no evolution. It's just, this is who I am now. And it focuses on him and it focuses on like the police that are after him. Once the Duke arrives with her daughter, there's some press around that and they need to kind of silence the press so they don't give away their spot of like pretending to be these high class individuals.
Right.
So they end up like in a scene almost suggests that they've murdered a journalist.
They kidnap them ultimately.
Right. But
it
like,
does look like murder.
They're like, why don't we check in this room that no one goes into where the jewelry is? And then a headline pops up that's like missing journalist. And you're like, did they kill that man?
Right.
Like, what are we doing? And it takes 5 to 10 minutes for them to be like, he's in that room that we have a guy watching. He's okay.
There's 3 of them.
At that point, that's correct. There's 3 now at that point. So there are 3 reporters that are missing, and we, for 5 minutes, believe that Dave the Dude and his team may have just killed this man.
Yeah.
But then they're like, he's fine. He's in a room. So they're safe. They're just kidnapped in this room.
And that becomes such a big plot point.
It does, because it's essentially a hostage negotiation.
Yes.
When it's found out, we're getting ahead of ourselves. But when they find out about it and they talk about it with the police, it's essentially like, yeah, I have him. And I'll let him go if you let me go. It's like, that's not how this works.
Let me do my little act with Apple Annie, and then I'll let him go. Like
that makes sense, but the way that he words it is so much funnier. He's like, let me have my party.
Right.
Let me just have this party, and I'll release him. It's like, that's not how this works, man.
Let me play Mario Kart with my friends, and then I'll let him go.
Do you know how hard it is to find a live band that has learned all the songs from Mario Kart and is going to play it while we play Mario Kart?
In 2026, not that hard.
Yeah, you're welcome, all the nerds out there. I see you. I respect you. Yeah, no, I mean, you're absolutely right about that, and it does sideline Apple Annie for a large portion of it. I would say the majority of the movie, honestly, to a point where I was like, is she okay? We haven't seen her in a minute. We've seen a lot of Judge, not a lot of Annie. I do want to take a second to talk about Ray Robson. You mentioned that she was nominated for Best Actress. Not only this, she was the first Australian to be nominated for Best Actress.
Wow.
And also, I don't know if you know this is huge. She was the oldest actress at 75, the oldest nominated actress until, this was 1933, right? This stayed a true fact until Jessica Tandy in Driving Miss Daisy in 1989 was nominated at the age of 80.
Wow.
So
it's a long record.
that was 66 years.
Wow.
66 years. 56 years. Sorry, I'm doing math now.
Less impressive.
Boo now. 56 years of the Academy. And for the next 56 months, roughly, you and I will be talking about this one thing, that she was the oldest nominated actress up until that point.
Yeah.
Really cool.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And again, it's a great performance. It's just one that does get sidelined for half the movie.
Yeah.
So it's tough.
And spoiler, I think it's a big reason she doesn't win this award.
Sure.
Because
because she's not the majority of the movie.
She's not. She's
now that
really
hasn't
not.
stopped Best Actor or Best Actress winners in the past, but and certainly in the future. But I think it's a case to be made of why she wasn't.
Right.
Speaking of the cast here, Guy Kibbe. We just talked about him. Showed up in 42nd Street. You mentioned him for Gold Diggers of 1933 as well. Yeah. So he showed up a lot. You know what's funny? I heard Guy Kibbe, and I was like, that name sounds familiar. I think I just saw some of him in it. And as soon as Judge shows up, I was like, oh, right. Albert from 42nd Street.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah. I liked him way more in Lady for a Day. And I think this kind of lends to the style that I love of like, we took the underground or underworld of like New York and like some of the thieves, robbers, and gangsters and showed like the lighthearted nature of them. And I think not that he's like a terrible person. He's a pool shark. That's essentially a fast talking pool shark is the best way to describe him. But he's so charming in this. I thought he was great in Lady for a Day. I have a suspicion that you liked him more in 42nd Street, but
yeah. Look, when they're first at the pool hall and he does that one trick shot where he breaks all 6 balls and they go into an individual pocket, all separate pockets, I was like, how did they do that? That was incredible. And then when they played pool for the next 45 minutes of the movie, I was like, who cares? What are we doing? It really is like the plot of this movie detracted so much from every other element where I was just like, hey, Judge, can you go to Apple Annie, please? She needs you. And I need her.
Yeah.
So
the story needs her.
Yes. So I honestly, I don't remember him being charming. I just remember him feeling self-centered because he was hogging the spotlight.
Yeah. I mean, that's fair. You know, I really liked his performance in this. And I think, again, this is just the storytelling, like the kind of storytelling that I love. Mm-hmm. I think it's easy to kind of call this as like a niche thing that I really enjoy of like Capra's storytelling. So this was just like the most round peg, round hole scenario for me to love this. A couple of things that I thought was really cool. We talked about Columbia specifically, a very big movie for them because this was the first film for them to be nominated for Best Picture.
Yes.
Kind of crazy. I mean, we're in the 6th Academy Award year?
Yes.
So 6th Academy Award year. And in those 6 years, Columbia has not been present.
Well, that's the wild thing about it. I mentioned at the top of the show, Poverty Row Pictures. And that's not an individual studio, but if you go back and you look at all of the nominees that we've covered on the show, I mean, you have RKO, you have Paramount, Warner Brothers, MGM. With Private Life of Henry VIII, you had London Pictures, so you had something international.
Right.
Columbia was considered a Poverty Row studio, and that was another way of saying like a small independent studio. It didn't have the bankroll that all of these major studios had.
Right.
So it was kind of your lower budget studio, and that was kind of a big reason Capra was able to do what he did. Mentioned how he kind of weaseled his way into the industry. It was really him showing up. He heard about movies. He went and he watched a movie over and over and over and said, I could do that. And kind of showed up at the studio and said, hey, you need me to get you coffee or anything? And they're like, leave me alone. I'm working. We're working on this picture. We have no one to direct it. And he's like, I'm a director. And that just skyrocketed him to being important at essentially Columbia Pictures under Harry Kahn.
Well, and I think that's important because he kind of writes himself into these roles, right? Like the individual who kind of saves the day by just being their normal self. Like this is not just...
or lying about their normal self.
Or lying, correct. I mean, in one way or another, like kind of weaseling their way into it, right? I think the exception is the Jimmy Stewart character. Like that's just a guy who continues to show up and has everything he's taken for granted.
Yeah.
And that's the exception to the rule. Otherwise, Dave the Dude kind of mirrors that a bit. Granted, a ton of wealth, but otherwise he weasels his way and uses that power to kind of like get to be the hero of the day. So he does have a tendency to write for those kinds of characters. Interested to see this move forward, but I'm seeing the connective tissue between It's a Wonderful Life and this and his background.
That's so interesting. I can see the connective tissue between Capra's own life and Lady for a Day, and then Capra's own life and It's a Wonderful Life.
Yep.
Connecting the two, however, these feel so different.
They do.
And he definitely has a shift in his life and his career before we get to It's a Wonderful Life.
There's a difference. See, to me, I do see the connective tissue. I see the formula. Mm-hmm. The formula changes in the sense that it's much more sympathetic with It's a Wonderful Life, where it's like an everyman story.
Yeah.
And Lady for a Day is a little bit more of like a zany comedy concept.
Yeah.
Which, again, Mr. Deeds and everything, like there's a similarity there. But you're right. There's like a prestige level that he gets to with It's a Wonderful Life, where it's like he's unlocked like a true American like story.
I think I could say that's the connective tissue there is he writes about the American story. And like the way this opens up with like kind of on the streets and seeing what what the country is like during this time period, that makes sense. Like he's writing the American story and he's being very real and upfront about it. This does get a little fantastical with its plot, but he's still kind of involving the real world in his stories.
Yeah.
And I can respect that. Let me respect Frank Capra, you know. But you know what I'm saying.
How brave of you.
I know. Hair flip.
We do the Lord's work here at the podcast.
Yeah, we do.
A couple things. It's hard not to love the idea of Frank Capra. Behind the scenes note, I let you, I brought over today a documentary about Frank Capra. What's it called? It's Frank Capra...
Mr. America.
Mr. America. It's a documentary that's a part of that box set that I talked about. I'll pull the name and post it in the Discord. But there's a whole name for the box set. It comes with this Blu-ray of his documentary. I'm excited to watch it as well. And I'm excited to learn more about him. But what I've known of him and heard of him makes you really admire the work that he does, specifically because a couple things about this. In the 1950s, the original negative of Lady for a Day was lost completely. So Capra actually allowed his own print that he had to be duplicated and was duplicated into a negative, and then donated that negative to the Library of Congress.
Wow.
So the restoration and the preservation of film that we talk about is case in point in the work that he did of, hey, take my copy and let's make a copy of it so you can have this. So really cool to be able to do that. And that leads to a 2012 Blu-ray that was released of this. And it restored the complete film. So prior to that restoration, there was 4 minutes of the movie that weren't included. Now, granted, when I say this, you're like, wow, that's so cool. I'm sure it's like 4 minutes that were really important. No, it was like them planning the reception. Like it was... It was Happy and Judge and Dave, the dude.
Not Annie?
Not Annie.
Well, yeah, keep it.
Wouldn't it be funny if I was like, there's lost footage of this? You're like, oh, man, it was an Apple Annie, and that's why it was missing from the middle? Nah, it's not even that. But it's 4 minutes
pool.
That are... It was more pool, more billiards. That was included in the 2012. So the version that we watch now has that restoration. So it's case in point of like the preservation that we talk about and the importance of it. Granted, the footage that's lost may not ultimately be that important, but it's the story that they tell. So to see the full scope of the story that they're trying to tell, it's important to have this in the preservation. So I was really excited to read that he was as much of a contributor to the restoration and preservation as I imagine we both would be if we had copies.
Yeah. No, it's always great. And, well, I can't say a lot of directors did this, but it seems like Howard Hughes, Howard Hawks, Frank Capra, they all had their own personal collections because I think he included are very proud of their work. And, you know, I had mentioned this was like his first shot at an Oscar. He's kind of notorious early in his career for like that being a goal in the movies he made. Remind me of the first movie, The Bitter...
The Bitter Tea of General Yen.
Yes. When he made that movie, his whole goal was, wow, I've heard about the Oscars. I want to win one of those. And he made that and it didn't get nominated.
Right.
So when this was nominated, he was like, oh, this is a shoo-in. We're sweeping. I'm going to be the first one to have his picture win 4 Oscars. Spoiler alert, didn't win anything.
Yeah.
But it is interesting that, like, besides an actor campaigning for themselves, this is the first time someone's really their goal is the Academy Awards.
Yeah, and you're right that it was less of a celebration of him and more of an indication of his arrival.
Yeah.
Right? It was an arrival. Columbia Pictures was obviously very appreciative of everything that he had done for that. Radio City Music Hall obviously reaped the benefits of taking that chance of considering him as good luck. I also think this is a very interesting movie for this to happen to, because it's a movie that is depicted or completely dependent on one man's search of his good luck. Just his thought of Apple Annie being like his good luck charm. Radio City Music Hall did the same thing. So it's a nice little coincidence that it happens for this movie. So I thought that was cool. The other thing too, of note, this is not his first movie. You mentioned The Bitter Tea of General Yen, but this is his announcement of his arrival that we talked about. And he actually remade this.
Yeah.
As A Pocket Full of Miracles. It was the name of the remake in 1961.
Yeah.
And, again, the coincidental thing to this, that was actually his final feature film.
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
So it's funny how, again, not his first film, but kind of his introduction to the Academy. also serves as his final feature film later on in 1961.
Yeah, and Glenn Ford and Betty Davis were in Pocketful of Miracles.
There you go.
I like Betty Davis. I'd be curious to check it out.
I have to double check to see if that's included in the collection that I have.
Oh, yeah.
Because I would like to watch both of those and see what it's like. One of my favorite things to do that I have done is Taylor and I watched We Love You've Got Mail. Not a surprise. But we watched the You've Got Mail Blu-ray that we have. Came with the original film, Shop Around the Corner.
Yeah.
Also starring Jimmy Stewart. So we watched that, and it's so cool to watch that and how it evolves into You've Got Mail. I'm interested to do a similar thing where I've watched Lady for a Day, and now watch Pocketful of Miracles and see how that has changed, especially with the same director. I wonder what it's like. Any regrets, or like how it could have done that differently from the 30s to 60s, what that looks like.
Yeah, let me know.
I'm interested.
Let me know how that goes. Or if you have it, because I'd watch it too.
I have a feeling if I have the double feature in that, and I'm like, hey man, we're going to watch Lady for a Day at 3, and then Pocketful of Miracles at 5, you'd be like, I'll see you at 5.
Probably. Yeah.
Fair. Yeah, I was a very big fan of this, and I think this ultimately does have a lot of the connective tissue and formula of what is to come with Frank Capra. And I think specifically there's a scene towards the end where Apple Annie shows up again, and she's like, hey, by the way, I'm still here. And
remember me?
My daughter and I have been getting along. Thanks for the time to get along. But I need to come clean, and I need to tell the Duke who I really am and how we can't do this anymore. And we just need to figure this out.
Well, yeah, because ultimately the police show up at this ball, and they're going to break it up. So the gangsters are
close. They have essentially the reception is going to happen at Apple Annie's apartment.
Yeah,
right. And then the gangsters and all of their team are rehearsing at a separate hotel, and the police have that hotel surrounded. So if they leave, they're going to follow them.
They're preventing them from playing all of their characters.
Correct.
So kind of the Frank Capra twist at the end that brings that hopeful American integrity is the judge and all of these politicians who have heard of this story.
The mayor, the governor.
Yeah, they've become very sympathetic towards Apple Annie. They decide that they are going to show up at this faux ball and kind of play the parts themselves.
Right. And the interesting thing about this is that we see Dave the Dude and Happy get arrested and then brought to the mayor because they're like, hey, we can explain all this to the mayor and everything. They have long been a thorn in the side of the city, the mayor, the governor, the police chief, everyone. And they think, hey, we can make a deal with the police. And the mayor and the governor too are so critical of the police of how have you guys not been able to get this guy before? And they're like, hey, you try and get this guy and see what happens. And the way that we're left with them is Happy tells them you think they like fairy tales? Look at those skulls. You tell me if they like fairy tales. Let's find out.
Yeah.
Alluding to, let's tell them the tale of how this has happened and the fantastical story of this. And that's a hard cut. We don't see what happens in that room. Mm. And that's when we see Apple Annie okay, well, look, they're not coming. The ball's not going to happen anymore. So let me just tell the Duke not to expect these high-profile individuals to come in. And she's having this very long story, and this is where I think she truly, has the last chance to earn the Oscar in this.
Right.
Of, you got to tell your story, and you got to, be really sympathetic about this. And she is fantastic in this. Again, this is, the heartwarming story and everything. She crushes it. But she has that perfect, I'm going to say Frank Capra moment when to me it's the second time I've seen it happen. But she has the Frank Capra moment where she's like, all right, look, here's the reality of everything. And as she's about to say it, you hear the music start playing at the reception. She's like, well, that's weird. Why is there reception playing?
Whose Bluetooth speaker?
Yeah.
Just connected.
Who connected to the Bluetooth here? The Wi-Fi network is not Apple Annie.
No. No, it's not.
No, it's literally it's called not Apple. It's one word, not Apple.
That's better. That's a funnier joke.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate that. Another good way you could tell it's a funny joke. It's a funny joke. I understand that.
That's the one.
So this is where we see the mayor and the governor show up. And I really again, this is the little sweet and simple comedy of the mayor walks in and he knows exactly who she is. And, oh, this must be your beautiful daughter. I haven't seen you since the last cotillion we've done. They've never met before. And you can see this on Apple Annie's face. But then it's not until the governor comes in and the governor walks into the door before he meets Apple Annie and he leans over to his wife and he's like, what's her name again?
Right.
And she reminds him of her, it's E something Manville or something like that. But that's her high society name that she's been sharing. And his wife very quickly says the name, and she's like, I thought you would have remembered that. Be sure to remember that. And then they go up and meet him. So clearly they're in on the, ruse of it as well. And it's clear that Dave and Happy have convinced them that it's better to go along with this than to kind of reveal their plot. And what that's traded for, we'll see. But even after the reception, they make the midnight cruise run, which I got to tell you. In 1933, do you think there was a lot of midnight cruises?
The boat.
Yeah.
Okay, like an actual cruise. Probably more so than now.
I guess so. There's just a lot of especially Bad Girl. They're like, oh, there's a curfew. We got to be back by this time. Can't share a room. And there's a boat handing out at midnight. Hard to imagine what's going on there. Anyways, they have a midnight ship that they have to make. And they have a police escort. And even at one point, they're like, Father, look how great, a police escort. We really are high society.
Right.
Which is great. And then you have the reporters being like, cool, so we're going to talk about how Happy and Dave the Dude kidnapped us, right? And they're like, you weren't kidnapped, you were out on a drunk. And there's now the story that that's not going to happen. Now it's just this story that we've elaborated. I'm not going to say this makes a ton of sense, and I understand what's going on here, but it is to paint the picture of happy endings for everyone.
Yeah.
The reporters who were kidnapped and not killed are free. And Dave the Dude and Happy are not arrested. And ultimately, and this is what I appreciate, even though it's too little too late, the final shot is of Apple Annie waving her daughter off, presumably to get married in Spain and have a beautiful marriage with the man she actually loves, not just for money. And the dowry has been signed off by the Duke because he lost in billiards to Judge.
Yeah.
So everything has a nice little bow on top of it. And it's a perfect, sweet little story. And I do love the simplicity of this kind of American story that isn't too on the nose. It's not Americana, but it feels like it's captured into a real hopefulness of not even the American dream. It just feels like it's a story. It doesn't have to be America, but obviously that's what Capra resonates with.
I think the big thing with Capra is he focuses a lot on morals.
Yes, which I love.
There is a lot of that. I do think it's interesting that he attaches so many morals to the gangsters in this film.
People who you normally think are immoral.
Yeah.
Sure.
I don't think I like that.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
It's a hard thing to get into.
Right. It almost feels a little too saccharine and a little too silly.
It's extremely saccharine. That's a good word for it.
Yeah. So I think that not just the turn from, hey, this movie's about Apple Annie, psych. It's not. It's about the gangsters. And then making the gangsters just this it feels false because we've seen so many gangster films up to this point where obviously gangsters are criminals.
Sure.
And while they are still depicted as criminals in this, surprise, you're getting these fantastical versions of them that, they're the good guys actually, and it just, I don't know if I like.
Does it feel
that.
unearned?
It feels too fake, really.
Sure.
It almost feels like a Disney movie in a way, too fantastical.
Sure, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
You're totally rational to feel that way. I think for me, the way to defend, not so much that, but my interest in it is I really like the way that he writes character interactions. Yeah. I think the way that characters talk to each other feels earned and not just we're doing this to do it. In some instances, others the motivation of Dave the Dude makes sense, but more the transformation of here's my pocketbook for all the expenses.
Yeah.
A little more questionable, but I'll give you a great example. I really like the way that class talks to each other. I think that the butler's speaking to Happy McGuire and vice versa. Happy has such a pessimistic, cynical way of looking at things, and the butler is a lot more kind of commenting on things happening in real time.
Yeah.
There's a great moment when Happy first meets the butler and he walks in and he's like, don't get it stressed. Don't stress about it. Go overlook and don't depress yourself over it. Go get him and tell him I want him. And the butler says in a very monotone tone, I promise not to be depressed, sir. And then he has that great line where he tells him, if there's a weapon, I mentioned this earlier, if I had a weapon to fight you with, I would choose the vocabulary.
Yeah.
There's a lot of little zingers that he has that aren't I'm trying to offend you, but just more here is the fact.
Yeah.
I won't be depressed over this. I could win a battle with you with words, but not try and fight him. There's a lot of great chemistry between characters, and it doesn't feel like they just said this to say it. There is the way they would say it. And it feels lived in, and it feels real. And whether the story is fantastical or not, it feels justified's not the word I'm looking for, but it just feels lived in. And
Yeah.
I really, really like a world that has rules, logic, and feels lived in. And this factors into that for me. So I really like this a lot. And I like what I've seen of Capra. Fingers crossed this continues into all the other ones. I have a feeling it will, from what I've heard. But I'm really excited to own this collection and kind of go through a bit of a deep dive.
Yeah.
I'm a huge sucker, and I'm not sure, don't know if we've said this before, and you can consider this the after hours section of this episode, but I'm a very big fan of like directors and looking at their filmography and seeing what the differences are or the similarities and how they've grown. So I'm really interested that like Capra kind of tends to be someone who not just has the story, but also the filmography of someone like a Spielberg or a Scorsese, where you have this longevity.
Right.
Right. I mean, alone from at very least 1932 to 1961 is when you have a filmography of his to review and see what his work captures. So whether it be good or bad, or, you know, important, unimportant, minor, I'm really excited to see what obviously his presence had a very huge effect on movies in general, let alone the Academy. I'm interested to see, like, in a way of like, I want to follow Spielberg all the way through. I want to follow Scorsese all the way through, to do that with his work now that I have access to it. So I'm really excited for that. Whether we'll see if it's a successful journey when I finish it.
Sure.
But I'm really excited to do that.
Yeah, we've talked a little bit about the evolution of some of the directors we've seen show up multiple times on the show. Frank Borzage, Louis Milestone.
Mervyn LeRoy.
Yeah, and I think Borzage and Milestone are the big ones I can think of right now, just because they were around in that first Academy year.
Sure. And what they've accomplished in the time we've talked about.
Exactly. And it's fascinating now because we've talked about Borzage and how we're both like, his style like is very identifiable. I'm not crazy about it. Whereas Milestone, we're like, he has so much variety while still maintaining that style. I'm curious now, the two things that I think Capra is known for is his focus on like American values and morality and all of that, and then his ability to direct great performances out of his characters.
Right.
Every time I've watched one of his movies, I think that we are getting great performances out of his characters. However, this is now the second of 3 of his movies that I can recall. It's been a while since I've seen it happen one night, where that morality feels overwhelming in a way, and I'm not crazy about it. That's my biggest issue. I don't want to get into a whole thing about It's a Wonderful Life,
Sure.
but my biggest issue with that story is George Bailey, I just want him to take care of himself. And that overwhelming need to like help others.
Yeah.
I get that's the point of the movie, but I'm like, my dude, just look out for yourself. And I think that's Capra really clinging on to like, just be a good person, have integrity and follow the American morality. And I don't know that I like that.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if this is going to be the start of me discovering that I don't really like Frank Capra.
And that's why it's such an interesting thing for us to host this together, because where I think we normally land on the same side of the coin with most things, I think that's where I feel the exact opposite, where it's going to be really interesting, because that's kind of my like general programming.
Right.
Like, I think that's who I am. I am logical. I am based in morality. Anything that I do is for other people. And the reason I love It's a Wonderful Life so much is like, that's me. Like, that is me from like the not the day I was born, but like my general programming is to kind of make sure everyone around me is okay.
Yeah.
To a point where like I am neglecting myself and I'm neglecting who I am. So it was very easy to see myself in George Bailey. And granted, that's kind of like a, you know, the easiest answer is like, look out for yourself, but you get lost in that and lost of like, I have to make sure the people around me are okay because that's what makes me happy is them. And then you lose sight of like being selfish and like doing what's right for you. And I've gotten better about that over time. I'm much better about it now, but like that was a huge issue for me. So that's why that resonated with me so much, that movie. And the morality play of Lady for a Day, I think, is another reason that I loved this so much. So it is just who I am. And I don't think this is a, you know, we're kind of getting there anyways. It's not a 4.5 star for everybody, right? Sure. And it is for me. Like, for me, I gave this 4.5 stars on Letterboxd. And I understand that this is more of like a personal choice than it is like, you know, Ryan, the Oscar like enthusiast, is saying that it's a 4.5 star and it's among the best of that they've ever made. It's not that. It's just one of my favorites. And I really enjoyed this watch. And I think with other watches, it's felt a little more research. And with this, it was more like, I want to see this in a theater. Like, I wish I could watch this in a theater and have popcorn and like experience the whole thing. And it's not the shots, and it's not the, incredible moments and, oh, can you believe they got this on camera? And the performances are good. It's the formula. It's the storytelling. It's the morality play.
Yeah.
So I'm a big fan of something like this. And I know that your rating was lower. What did you give it?
I gave it 2 stars.
Sure.
Yeah, there's almost a part of me that would have went lower.
Interesting.
But it I don't want to be that guy, but I almost feel like I gave it like an extra half-star bump because I'm like, I know there's something here. This is Capra, but if I'm being honest with myself, I don't think I connected with this movie at all.
Sure.
And I do think that it's kind of interesting. You could almost take the show and use it in a way as like a personality test. And that's not to say like, I have 0 morals and what Capra's doing here is disgusting. Go... Let's pretend to shoot more dogs. It's nothing like that.
Sure. That's your lesson, your takeaway. I'm writing that down.
But I do think it's interesting. Like maybe this is the first like glance into us as people, and like you enjoy a more like an optimistic story.
Sure.
Whereas I find myself enjoying tragedies, and maybe I'm a little like cynical at times in a way that maybe you aren't.
Hear me on this. I feel like you and I both, give yourself some more credit. I think that we both, you can like optimistic stories and I can like cynical. I know that's true of me. Right? Like Arrival is in my top 4. And that, I don't want to say cynical, but that is a tragic movie.
Sure.
So there are tragedies that I love tremendously. And I'm sure there's optimistic stories you like when they feel earned.
Right. Yeah, that wasn't a blanket statement of like, you hate everything sad. No, but I just think that like we're drawn... just like anybody in the world, we're drawn to very specific stories and very specific themes.
That's our compass.
Yes. And I think that this might be, it kind of goes without saying, this is our biggest gap in ratings, I think, so far. And I think it's interesting that it almost serves as like a looking glass of maybe what we like from film in general, or from stories at least.
Yes.
So... yeah, I'm curious to see how that continues to unfold.
I wonder if there's like a need later down the road of creating like a corporate account where it's like, this is like, haha, goofy Ryan, like this is Ryan's like true thoughts. And then there's like the historian in me tells you that it's actually this many stars. Because I wonder if that's going to come into play later. But this was totally like I understand that, and you're totally right in a lot of it. And I'm not saying like without this movie we wouldn't be where we are now. It's kind of true for Capra, but not this movie specifically.
Sure.
We'll get there when we get there. But it was something that I really enjoyed. And I think, you're 100% correct. Lady for a Day is not like the kind of movie it is not sexy. Like it is not like it's a really complicated like story about, the way you look at like the cynical nature of this person or how this person transforms into that. It's not that. And it is essentially almost at its core a Hallmark type story.
Yeah.
Like you'll see it more like you'll see these tendencies and these trends and formulas more in a Hallmark movie than you will on like the theater.
Sure.
And that tends to happen, and I understand that. And I think they did it at a time where it felt earned and didn't just feel like, well, this is what we do and this is just what our movies are. This was different at the time, and I appreciated this was a breath of fresh air for what I'd seen previously.
Yeah.
So I loved it, but I totally recognize that is not indicative of the quality of Oscar movies moving forward. Even what we've seen this year, 42nd Street ultimately is a better movie than this.
I Am a Fugitive from a Chain Gang.
Ultimately better than this.
Yeah.
Totally. But this resonated with me so deeply that I just was a huge fan. So Lady for a Day, huge 4.5 star movie for me, but probably closer to like a 3.5 when it comes to the Oscar nature of it. Maybe a 3.
Yeah.
So different for me totally.
Interesting. Yeah.
Double feature. I'm interested in what you did for this.
Yeah. So I kind of focused on the role playing element of this movie.
Sure.
Because that was my favorite part of it, was Apple Annie, even though she was sidelined. And I went with somebody who was also trying to pretend to be somebody else to have a better possibility of being with their kids. Mm-hmm. So I went with the Robin Williams film, Mrs. Doubtfire.
That's a great pick.
Yeah. So, a little different in the sense that it's not like portraying a different class. It's a full-on gender bend here. He's playing I think she's Scottish nanny, Mrs. Doubtfire, who it's very silly, very comical, classic movie. So good, just a blast overall. And I think a great representation of this type of story, at least. Creating this whole elaborate ruse to get closer to your kids or have an opportunity to prove yourself in a way.
God, that's a great pick. It's also very Capra-esque, and it's like the heartwarming story of like what a father will go to and like will he lie to his family to kind of get closer to them.
Yeah.
Great call. I went with a movie from 1999. Oh, sorry, I'm skipping over what I was going to say. I have a sticker on my work laptop of Mrs. Doubtfire, and it says "Hello, dear." That's a voice I love doing all the time. Of like, "Hello." That and the "Help is on the way." I do all the time, and it was a Run by Fruiting when he throws an orange, I think, at him.
Yes,
at Pierce Brosnan.
yeah.
Tells him it's a run by Fruiting. Don't have a sticker of that one, unfortunately, but I'll get one soon.
Is that the one where he pretends to be a hot dog?
What?
Where he's like, I do a great impression of a hot dog, and then he just goes...
I don't think so.
I don't remember what movie that is, but I love it.
It might be in Mrs. Doubtfire, but it's not in that scene because Mrs. Doubtfire is sitting poolside.
No, it's when he's Robin Williams when he does the hot dog impression.
Oh,
yeah.
I think that is Mrs. Doubtfire.
That's one of my favorite parts.
I thought you meant in that scene. I was like, no, I don't think he pretends to be a hot dog in that scene. So my film, I went in 1999. I decided to go in a different route and focus a bit more on the mafia side of things, like the gangster, fitting into the side of gangsters. We saw gangsters trying to like lean into the morality play and be like nicer to the community. I decided to take a role where we saw someone actually entering the world of gangsters. And I went with the 1999 movie directed by Kelly Malkin called Mickey Blue Eyes.
Oh, okay.
This is a movie starring Hugh Grant, Jean Triplehorn, and James Caan, where Hugh Grant is a English auctioneer, and he gets engaged to the daughter of a mafia kingpin, played by James Caan, and gets involved in the family business, so to speak. It's a rom-com. It's very goofy. It is not nearly like, to the high caliber nature of something like Mrs. Doubtfire.
Sure.
But it does kind of paint the inverse of Lady for a Day, of blending into the world of crime versus the world of crime kind of like making an appearance into the world of morality.
Gotcha.
So I liked the double nature of that, or the kind of like mirrored reflection of it. I didn't even remotely have Mrs. Doubtfire on my radar. That's a great call. Hello. Great job.
No, that's an awesome double feature. I thought you were going to say Donnie Brasco, but
could have.
This is probably better.
Yeah,
honestly,
a good call. Yeah. I also want to take this time to shout out Ashton. We do this multiple times, but Ashton messaged me recently, and she had just watched She Done 'Em Wrong, and she was watching the movie, hadn't listened to the episode yet, and she said she texted me and said, if you didn't pair this with Moulin Rouge, I'd be really upset. And I was like, wow, it's a Best Picture nominee. I couldn't do that. And she said, something you'll love, hasn't stopped you before.
This is true.
So I was like, I've changed, Ashton.
I've evolved.
So I was like, you're going to like what I picked anyways.
Yeah.
Jury's out on whether she did. She hasn't texted me back yet, but
we'll
just
see.
wanted to shout her out for what I thought you would appreciate. Yeah. She Done 'Em Wrong came out already.
No.
What?
Well, at the time of this recording, yes. Or, I'm sorry, the time you're
this
listening,
comes out.
yes.
Yes.
Okay.
I was about to say.
But in real life, no.
You're right.
I'll cut all this. But
don't.
What movie did we watch? Lady for a Day. Hey, that's Lady for a Day. Yeah, let us know what you think. I'm really curious about this one, like where you fell. If it was closer to what you enjoyed about it, or it was closer to what I really didn't like at all about it.
Right.
So give us your thoughts on it, outao podcast@gmail.com. Or you can join the Discord by going to patreon.com/outao podcast. That helps support us financially, pays for the podcast hosting platform, which that helps.
Also, if you join the Patreon, I do have apples that I'm handing out.
Nice.
Hopefully that helps us get along if we get like $1 an apple. So just let me know.
They're lucky apples.
Yeah. Also, my daughter's coming into town soon. So if we can, figure out some way of me not selling apples around, she thinks I'm royalty.
I'm dressing up.
Oh.
Guess who's going to be Lady for a Day?
You know what's great about this? I feel like I was Dave the dude on this episode, and you were my Happy Maguire. I was just like, this is a dumb idea.
Yeah.
This is never going to work.
This is pretty accurate.
Yeah, it works out pretty well.
But yeah, I mean, check out the Patreon, shoot us the email, and for the next episode, I'm excited for this. We've got an original version of a movie that was nominated for Best Picture recently.
Yeah.
Little Women.
I was just following through on that. I was like, yep, followed.
Yeah, so Little Women is available, I believe, just video on demand.
Right. It's also, you pointed out that it is available on Blu-ray.
Yeah.
But yeah, in terms of streaming, on demand.
Yeah, so check that out. Get excited for that. Greta Gerwig ain't got nothing on whoever directed that. I'll have to look again.
But does the original version of Little Women, 1933, have Bob Odenkirk exclaiming that they are his Little Women?
It might. Who knows? Who's to say?
I'm really, really surprised if that happens.
I'm going to edit it into whatever version you watch.
Just a like a paper stick version of him just walking, flapping onto the screen.
Thickly.
Your voice. My Little Women.
Yeah. It's the speak and spell we use to do all of our actor translation. Or
do you have
names.
a speak and spell?
I'm gonna.
Where are you going to get it?
I don't know. Where do they sell them? Toy
Online.
Stores? Well,
Toy stores?
Yeah, man.
You think they're still selling speak and spells?
I don't know, man.
I'd be amazed if they still had like the cow says "mrrr" thing that you like pull the cord. You know what I'm talking about?
I'm gonna get one of those too for when we cover State Fair 2.
The pig says, "I'm gonna fight that other pig."
Yeah, it does. Anyway, stay tuned for Little Women. That's gonna do it for this episode. As always, I'm your host Kyle,
And I'm losing the plot.
and we'll see you at the movies.